I am not even kidding when I say this. And my question is as follows, Chuck, but let me explain my reasoning for just a second. My question is as follows. Should the UFC consider getting rid of the heavyweight division? And I bring this up because of what we saw on Saturday night, namely in the Rizvan Kuniev fight with Jelton Almeida. Now, Kuniev ends up winning a unanimous decision event. Jelton Almeida, by the way, 0 for 8 on takedowns. Here are his striking numbers: 5 for 12, 8 for 21, and he picks it up a little bit in the third, although he whiffed on 4 takedowns, hitting 18 significant strikes. But it was a disaster of a fight. It was awful. We didn't need it. And here's the reason why I'm asking this question, Chuck. We have a disastrous situation at heavyweight where there's virtually nothing of any kind of high quality. Tai Tuivasa is still ranked, is 0-6 in his last 6 and hasn't won in 4 years. But the problem gets magnified when you realize they don't want to sign Francis Ngannou, and they tried to sign Rico, but it appears that they didn't offer him enough money, so he went to go box instead. My question to you is, Chuck, what is the point of keeping around heavyweight if you're not developing talent that comes up to supply it from the bottom, and you're unwilling to bid on the services of the best heavyweights, or at a bare minimum, in the case of Rico Verhoeven, a very, very interesting and fun signing for as long as that would last. But again, with Francis Ngannou, and everyone's going to say, well, they got sideways with Francis, and, Rico decided to go do boxing. And my point is, well, then what are we doing? Why are we keeping this division around if you cannot sign from the top down and you're unable to build from the bottom up? What is the point, Chuck?
Man, you did bring this up, and when was the last, honestly, can you even recall the last really good heavyweight fight you saw in the UFC? Because it's I was thinking about this, and I know they probably exist, but it seems more often than not that that they kind of end, this is kind of how they end these days. This particular fight, especially on the heels of the Tuivasa fight, where he just couldn't even muster the strength to get up and deliver the fatal blow at the end just to kind of get that victory. To see this fight, it's just, I don't even know how to explain it, man. It's such a, especially in the apex, it's just such a soul-sucking moment to me, because you see how it's playing out. There's nothing going on. Jelton Almeida looks like he'd rather be anywhere, honestly, than fighting in that fight. And he's just getting pushed up against the cage. The referee is like, guys, please start moving. Then he has to step in there and basically pry them apart and set it again just so it can resume back on the cage. A guy posting him up. This is what occurs to you, man. It's almost like back in the day, there was no interest, or there was little interest in the flyweights, and the UFC considered sawing it off. If you take that logic at all and you look at the heavyweight division, particularly for the reasons you just outlined, all of the excitement that they can fuse into it, they're just not getting done, or they have no interest in doing that. One of them being a vendetta with Francis Ngannou, who would at least add an element of the bigness of what you're trying to achieve there, right? Like a guy returning, some people might see him as the best heavyweight going. You plug him into a situation where you got Aspinall, and hopefully he's able to come back, but you've got a couple of guys. Suddenly you're working with something. But right now, especially with Rico and just anybody that would spice things up, John Jones, they can't seem to work things out. Now he's talking about an arthritic hip. It's not an outrageous question, man. You went through this exercise, right? Like we were talking about 10 years ago in the UFC, like what it looked like, what did the heavyweight division look like compared to now? And when you look at that, Verdum, Velasquez, the JDS, Stipe was still there, Arlovsky, Travis Brown, Barnett, Hunt, you go down those names. You're like, any iteration of that was pretty good. But then you get down to maybe Rothwell and Overeem, and that's kind of where we're at now. It's like the dudes at the top, you've got Blades, you've got Almeida, Spivak, Tybura, those types of guys. They would have been, this would have been the fringe outside the top 10 in those days. And it's just, so what are we doing? We haven't built that division. There's very few young guys. I don't know if there's a single guy in that top 15 that's below. I don't know if anybody's below 30 years old. And a couple of them, when you get down to Derek Lewis and Tybura, they're in their 40s. I don't know why you would, honestly, in this form, it wouldn't even hurt me if they were like, nah, we're just doing away with it. Would it bother you?
No. Well, I don't. Here's the thing to me. I don't understand what the point is of keeping it around if you're not going to try to make it great. Right.
Yeah.
So if you want to keep it around because, hey, listen, we don't like Francis, but we know it's good for business. We'll sign him to a 3-fight deal. He'll fight 3 times and be on his way. Something to, to staunch the bleeding. That's one way to go. Give Rico a big signing bonus to come over here. The UFC is printing money. It's no one can argue with a straight face that they don't have the money for it, or that they're going to be out like they're going to be outbid by some other kind of MMA promotion. Now, I guess if Rico wants boxing money and he's going to fight, I don't know, Usyk or something like that, that's a little harder to compete with. Fair enough. But at the same time, again, there's other options about what they could have done or who they can sign or who they can attract. And that's just not happening. And it's like, if your whole reason for letting Verhoeven walk is that you underbid him, you're not willing to sign Francis, presumably when he becomes available, then what are we doing?
Right.
Then what is the point of this? At a bare minimum, please stop putting this on the main card. At a bare minimum. Fire this. If you just need content because you need a certain amount of bodies on the roster divided up by division to just, make the content demands at the end of the month, then fine, do that, I guess. But put it on the prelims, because this is a waste of everyone's time. This is not world-class fighting. Who on earth can look at that fight and say this is world-class MMA? It's not. It's absolutely not world-class MMA by any measurement whatsoever. And I don't understand what the point is of like crushing all of your competitors, having all the money in the world, and you're underbidding people who you desperately need. It can't be both. It can't be both. Like, this is a division that's important to us, but we're just not willing to invest in it because we have these demands that we put on ourselves, or we don't want to pay guys a bunch of money. Okay, if that's the way it needs to go, I don't want to see them on main cards anymore. I don't want to see it. And I'll say this much too, Chuck. I'm not saying that this guy I'm about to name would beat Aspinall or Gane, because I do think that they are a little too fast, a little too athletic. However, Tim Sylvia would beat the fuck out of the vast majority of the guys on this roster. And you don't understand. Tim Sylvia, when he beat Gan McGee, this was at the same time that Pride had Fedor and Krokop and Nogueira and all these guys. And people were like, yeah, you got the leftovers there at the UFC Heavyweight division. Those leftovers would beat the vast majority of the guys on the roster today. What is the point of keeping that as just urban blight sitting on the divisional landscape? Cut that shit off and put it out of sight. I don't want to see it anymore.
I agree with you 100%, man. And I was, not that you get nostalgic for some of the times that we've had, but remember UFC 146? It was I think the whole main card was heavyweights. They were able to do that. I don't know how long ago that was. It's probably more than 10 years ago. It's probably 12 or 13
that
years
was,
ago.
That was May of 2012.
Okay, so going back to that, you look at that, and I just remember at the time you're thinking, look at this heavyweight division. There's so many possibilities here. It was awesome that they could just put them all on a main card. And what the UFC has always done really well is just kind of feed the imagination of what comes next. What comes next with this guy and this guy and this guy. That's what it was fun when Brock Lesnar was in there. And some of these guys, at that time, because you could kind of match make future fights. Is anybody doing that? Is anybody doing that with the heavyweight division now? Do you look at it and does it let your imagination go wild of, I'd love to see this guy fight this guy or this guy fight this guy? It doesn't even do that. It doesn't captivate the imagination. And at that point, and if you're not going to bring in the guys who would try to do that, they're the guys who might galvanize that action, where you'd be, Rico would be fun to plug him into some of these scenarios because the partition is down. He's a huge star, in his country. And to me, that would be very interesting to see how that plays out. But they can't get that done. And Francis Ngannou, we've shut the door on that. You don't even give hope for that type of scenario. I'm with you, man. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I don't see the value of having it, around right now. It's not a we were just talking about flyweight, where there's 5 guys that you can mix and match, and you're like, oh, any of these would be good. You can't even do that You can't like nobody would care. Nobody would care about the heavyweight, the top 5 guys if you tried to mix and match them, would they?
No. Again, I'm not saying this is the case for Kuniev or Almeida in particular. Almeida still looks very, very physically strong, but like half the guys on the roster look like they're biggest loser contestants and not even Ultimate Fighter,
And Almeida, man, I was high on him a couple years ago, and it's like one of those things you're like, well,
Almeida?
Yeah, Almeida. I was like, I thought maybe he might turn into something, but I think it was Ben Folks. He was like, does anybody check with him to make sure he wants to be doing this? Like, does he want to be fighting, or is it like one of those like him being polite and just kind of going through the motions of it? Because honestly, man, that was about as disinterested as you could be. Did you see it that way? It did not look like he wanted to be fighting.
He just looks like he looks to me like he's got one way to win, and if that happens, great. He'll work it out. But if not, there's nothing else that's going to happen. By the way, that card you mentioned, UFC 146. This was at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. JDS versus Frank Mir in the main event. He gets his lights punched out in round 2. Co-main event. Cain Velasquez beats the
I remember that
Antonio Silva.
Yeah.
Stops him in the first. Roy Nelson knocks out Dave Herman in the first. Pee Wee Herman was a fun guy. And Roy Nelson, black belt in jiu-jitsu, IFL champion. This guy did some shit back in the day. Stipe Miocic beats Shane Del Rosario. Rest in peace to Shane Del Rosario. And of course, Stipe Miocic, arguably greatest UFC heavyweight ever. And then Stefan Struve armbars LeVar Johnson in the first round. Now, not all
Big
of
Johnson.
LeVar Big Johnson, that was his name. I think he went back to prison, by the way. I'm not sure.
Oh my
but the point I'm trying to make is not all of these guys are also world beaters, but just you could have an entire card with some very good heavyweights and then some decent heavyweights, and it kind of fulfilled the job that it needed. You could never do this today. You could absolutely never do this. And here's who's available now. Again, Volkov, I appreciate his improvement. Okay. Pavlovich, all right. And Blades, all right.
Yeah.
And Waldo Cortez Acosta is athletic, but it's like, there's just not.
Yeah.
He's athletic in a time when, he's also feasting on whatever's left. Basically, everything after that is.
Heath Herring would beat most of these guys,
Yes. who was like, what's your skill? He's like, I'm just Texas tough.
I know.
Like, what else? Like, dude, Nogueira? What would Nogueira do to these guys? He would fucking smash them. This is absurd. It's absurd. And I just, my only request is, I know that they're not going to listen to me. I know they're not going to listen to a show like this. But if there's a way for any of them to hear, please stuff this on the prelim card. Because this is a complete, for the
especially the juxtaposition between a heavyweight and the flyweight fight. It always seems like you've just like electrons or suddenly, like, it's just because it's so mired in slow sludginess, and then you go to like this flyweight fight and it seems like you can't even keep up with it. It's like a double speed.
Bro, think about this. On this main card, it was the Bautista fight, the Horiguchi fight, the Kuniev fight, the Oleksiejczuk fight. You go down the list, pick anyone from the prelim fight. You could have had, by the way, the Donchenko fight against Moreno. That would have been a little bit more fun. Dude, how about Javid Basharat versus Gianni Vasquez? That fight was great. That was a great fight. How is that not a better use of the customer's time to watch than watching fucking Kuniev and Almeida do nothing? I for the first time in my life, I was like, I remember when the UFC got rid of lightweight in circa 2007 following the Josh Thompson and Yves Edwards fight. And at the time, it was a little bit of a shock, in part because you thought that they could have reconstituted it. And they eventually, of course, brought it back, and then it had its heyday. But it's like, I've seen the UFC cut divisions, dude. I've seen it. I've lived through it. Who's gonna miss heavyweight when it goes?
Yeah.
You know what you would miss, Chuck? You would miss the concept of heavyweight.